Hey everybody, this is Alex Big Blue. So today I was thinking it would be fun to do a video to where I talk about all of the type of things I think of when I think of Halloween, like jack-o'-lanterns or ghosts or whatever. And for each category, each thing that I think of, I thought it'd be fun to tell about my favorite comic character that correlates to that. So one for each category of each Halloween type of thing. And yeah, I thought it'd be fun to do that, so I thought we'd go and get right into that, and I'll name which topic it is and talk about which character. So one of the first things I think of when I think Halloween is jack-o'-lanterns. So for jack-o'-lantern, I'm going to go with one of my favorite Spider-Man villains, Green Goblin. So of course he throws the pumpkin bombs, and that's why I chose him for this category. But yeah, I think he is a very awesome villain for Spider-Man, one of his most deadly foes, and certainly one of the most personal, if not the very most, to Spider-Man. And I think Green Goblin's look is really cool and unique, of course, in the green and purple clothes, and of course the crazy eyes on the mask. And I think the insanity of Osborn is one of the things that really sets him apart from some of the other villains, and his obsession with trying to get Spider Man. So, yeah, great character. And one of the next things I think of is bats. So, for Bat, I'm going to go with Batman, which of course is my favorite DC hero if I had to pick, probably. And he's one of the all time classic characters in general, and very awesome and different from most other ones because he's a great detective and he's also a great fighter. He technically doesn't have any powers, even though, granted, it almost seems like it sometimes when he's fighting people. But I think he's just one of the coolest and best well rounded characters out there. And most of his stories are always great to boot. So, yeah, he's definitely my choice for Bat. And one of the next things is spiders. So, for Spider, of course, Spider Man, which is probably what you guys expected. But yeah, Spider Man is one of the all time great characters. One of my personal favorites for sure. And he has one of the coolest costumes of anybody ever in a comic book with a super kind of colorful red and blue. And I think Peter Parker and all of his struggles as Spider Man and otherwise really always makes him one of the best characters because you can definitely see how he's struggling and definitely feel that type of thing for him and yourself, and it kind of relates to him. And I also just think he's one of the coolest and most fun characters because, whether it be the quips or whether it be just the struggle he has to deal with crazy, powerful villains, and just everything about him is really cool, and I really like him a lot. So definitely he's my choice for that. And of course, trick or treating is one of the big things that probably everybody thinks of when they think of Halloween. So I chose to go with Trick on this one and go with the trickster himself, Loki. So, of course, Loki is one of the all time Avenger villains and great Thor villain, obviously, as well, being his brother. And I think Loki's mischievous and often devious schemes is very hard to deal with for everybody. And he's a great foe for pretty much most characters, really. And one of the all time great tricksters and kind of pranksters in a way as well at that. So yeah, I really like Loki in the movies and of course in the comics. Something else you usually see in Halloween imagery is a black cat. So for Black Cat, I'm going to go with Black Panther. I think Black Panther is one of the kind of most underrated, well, at least he was until the movie anyways. Now he's very popular for good reason, but before then was one of the really underrated characters anyways for a long time. So I'm glad to see now that everybody's, finding out about him more and really digging the character. I've always thought he was really cool, and I had some of his stories where he's got really serious stuff going on with actual stuff that goes on in Africa. I remember in Marvel Comics Presents had a lot of really crazy stuff and violent stories, and I just find him to be like somebody who's trying to do what's right and be a really good guy and try to figure out how to handle all of that as the king of Wakanda or other times, at any point. And I think he does a good job considering what he's dealt. And yeah, I think he's a very cool character, and his costume is awesome, and his powers is pretty high as far as that goes as well on the old physical traits. But yeah, I think he's a great character for sure. Also, something I generally see on Halloween material is cobwebs or spider webs, if you will. So for that, I'm going to go with the Scarlet Spider. So, Scarlet Spider is basically a clone of Peter Parker, or vice versa, however they eventually decided that. And I've always liked Scarlet Spider a lot. I think he's really cool, and I used to read his comics. I still do from time to time. I think his look is different from Spider Man by quite a bit, but I've always really liked his look. I think it's really cool, and I just think him as a person and as a character is really a really decent one that people probably would like more if they knew about him more. And among all of those things, what also stuck out to me when I was thinking about it was you usually see a bunch of the old time classic costumes, which are different types of monsters and stuff like that. So I'm going to name off a couple of those and say the characters that I want for each of those as well. Starting with Devil, you see the old Devil costumes a lot. And if it's going to be that type of thing, then for me, it's easy. It's going to be Daredevil because Daredevil is one of my favorite Marvel characters, anyways. He's way up there. And I think he's just really cool. I like the fact that even though he is blind, he has a way of still figuring things out and kind of knowing where everything is, seeing in his own type of way. And I think he's just one of the better kind of not super powerful characters, but definitely a very great fighter and powerful enough. And I think his costume, whether it be the red one or the yellow and red or some of the other ones he's had before, his costumes are always really cool. And I think his costume, actually, the red one, sort of really reminds you of the old type of Halloween costumes, anyways, to me. But yeah, I think Daredevil was just great all around character. I love his personality and the fact that he really doesn't feel fear and all that type of stuff. Just really makes him a great character. And for Witch, I'm going to go with Scarlet Witch. She's one of my favorite female characters. I think that she's super powerful, first of all, and very unique skill set overall. And I think her original, or I don't know if it's original or not, but her pink and red costume is really iconic to me whenever I think back about all of the comics that I saw when I was a kid. And I really like that costume a lot. And all of her other ones are pretty good too, as well, as far as I can remember. And I think the look of her character, her powers, and also her personality, and the fact that she started off as kind of as a villain, I think all of that makes her a very cool character. And I've always really liked her a lot. And for Ghost, I'm going to go with Ghost Rider, the Spirit of Vengeance. Ghost Rider is one of the overall coolest characters that was ever created in comics, in my opinion. Of course, being a skeleton that's on fire is just a very striking, cool looking visual. And then besides that, his power set, with all of the other things he can do, the pendant stare is one of the most kind of debilitating type of attacks that you can use on a criminal. And that's always something that is really cool, I thought. And also, in general, the fact that he has a flaming motorcycle. He's really hard to stop. He can use the chains. Ghost Rider is just a really great character, and I've always really liked him. And for Skeleton, I'm going to go with Vengeance. So Vengeance, for a lot of the same reasons I said I like Ghost Rider, applies for him as well. But also, I really love his kind of purple-looking skeleton look. It's a nice deviation from Ghost Rider. And all of his other stuff is kind of similar in a way, but looks different too, and I really like that about him. And I also find his personality as both Jake Baudolino and Vengeance to be different enough to definitely make him interesting as well. And I also, luckily enough, have his first appearance, so that kind of always makes me like him even more. But yeah, I think he's a really cool character in his own right, and I always love when he shows up. And for Vampire, I'm going to go with Bloodstorm, which is Storm as a vampire, but she's also, it's not the normal Storm, it's Storm from a different reality, which you actually find in the story Mutant X is where the character comes from. And I've always really liked that series anyways, but Bloodstorm is one of the really cool characters in that one. Storm is always great anyways, and then her as a vampire also, so adding all that together really makes the character cool and interesting. And she also shows up later on in X-Men Blue, I believe. I know I had a little bit of her in one of the other comics I had, and I hope that they do more with her in the future, honestly. And for Werewolf, I'm going to go with Capwolf. So Captain America as a werewolf is essentially what you get. It was in a story back in the 90s, I believe it was. And I had some of that back then, and I've always thought that was really cool. Werewolves is one of my favorite type of monsters, if not the very top, anyways. And Captain America has always been one of my favorite characters. So the mixture of that was really cool to me. And the story, from what parts I remember, was pretty cool. But yeah, I've always really liked Cap Wolf a lot as a character, and I definitely think he's my choice for that one. And for Scarecrow, I'm going to choose, of course, the Scarecrow, the Batman villain, and my favorite Batman villain, and one of the coolest characters of all villains, in my opinion. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Alex Blue. See you later.